Well, welcome to week 5 of nonprofit management. We're just about at our halfway point here. I wanted to summarize some of the important concepts and the executive management and board governance issues we're studying this week that are contained in the handout. So starting with chapter 4, governing boards. So volunteers, these are also volunteers in nonprofit organizations, kind of like the volunteers we spoke about last week, but obviously at a higher level. And the types of governance that we see in the nonprofit sector are people who are elected boards by the membership, representative membership, self-perpetuating boards, boards who get appointed by the board, appointed boards like you see in government a lot, where you get appointed by the governor or the state senate or board of trustees of a university, or some sort of hybrid board. Now, most of the types of boards we see in the nonprofit, human service, social service sector are the self-perpetuating, where the board votes, versus a general membership like in a homeowners association, so to speak. Responsibilities of the board break down into legal, and the legal are that they care, they are involved in due diligence, loyalty to the organization, obedience and sanctions in terms of following the bylaws, not operating outside the context of the agreed upon parameters. And Sarbanes-Oxley, which is a bill that's widely spoken about in terms of its impact on business, but it actually has impacted how you operate and can operate in the nonprofit sector, what kind of salaries you pay, as well as investment issues. It went well beyond Wall Street. The functional roles of boards are they hire and fire the CEO or director or executive director, whatever they may be called. They're keepers of the mission. They approve programs. They oversee the financial management, stability, including fundraising, and the accountability. The board and CEO are the difference between policy making and implementation. The Carver model stresses this a lot. The ends to be achieved versus the means to be achieved, the board staff relationships and the process of governance. These are all things that are sorted out, and the kind of CEO implements the policies that the board makes. Governance is also leadership, in that there's a fiduciary responsibility, there's a strategic responsibility, and there's a generative, where the visionary, the iterative, the kind of looking at the life of the organization. The concept of board-centered leadership is a growing one, where there's interaction, there's consideration, there's respect between the board and the CEO. There's accomplishments, there's productivity. The board is not just there to rubber stamp things, but they actually lead from the mission into areas that take the agency in new direction. This is a really good list of board effectiveness and best practices. That there's a constructive partnership with the CEO, that they're mission driven, that they're constantly thinking strategically. There's a culture of inquiry. They're not afraid to ask questions. I have a board that is really high powered, a former chancellor of the community college system, former DA, bankers, dean of a school of business. These are people who are not wallflowers. They're not afraid to ask questions. And you want them to be independent minded and to really look for transparency, integrity, that they look for sustainability of the organization, for results, practices that are purposeful, that they want to learn continuously about the organization, and they're revitalized. I like this statement that the text refers to. There is often no right way to govern an MPO board. The best way is often pragmatic and eclectic, and they need to become the champions of wealth and wisdom. These are some relationship from John Carver about what boards should do: be obsessed with effects for people, dare to be bigger than themselves, that's the vision thing, invest in select and training, surmount the conventional wisdom, want to have impact, not just be there to sit in a meeting for an hour and a half or two and a half hours and perpetually redefine quality. The executive chapter is also a good summation of the kinds of things that a CEO or executive director needs to embody. They need to commit to the mission, lead staff, manage and fundraise, financial stewardship, high ethical standards, lead the planning process, develop future leadership, build external relationships, community work, ensure quality and effectiveness, and support the board. The effective nonprofit CEO is always doing this as a juggling act, maintaining a focus on the mission, supporting the board with the external, sharing leadership, empowering others, developing leaders, focusing on key roles. So the good CEOs really understand the political frame that they're in. You have to be current with the issues that are happening out there and impacting the organization. You got to have the right person at the right place at the right time. Alignment of who the leader is with where the organization is going. Kind of founder syndrome, that there's a life cycle to these organizations, and be aware of executive transitions. And this is the statement that I always like about leadership, and which is something I have worked towards developing as I look towards my own retirement, having been here 31 years, when I only thought I was going to be here 3 years, is if I were to leave tomorrow, I don't think it would make much of a difference. That's when I will know that I have done my job, that the organization continues with or without me. Bennis and Goldsmith highlight some other areas that I think support these concepts that you read about in the chapters, the different between what is assumed about leadership and what is known, that it's a rare skill, that people are born, that you're charismatic, only happens at the top, leaders are men, failure is to be avoided. It's just the opposite of all of that, especially in this new world, that everybody's capable of leadership. It's a real human people process. It happens throughout the organization. It's about coaching and supporting, empowering. Leadership, you see a reinforcement of what you read in the chapters about character, being highly personal, purposeful, optimistic, integrity, relating to the character, shared values, much like Kouzes and Posner talk about. Future-oriented is being the optimistic, always having a foot in the future. Difference between management and leaders, this comes from Warren Bennis. A good manager does the things right. A good leader does the right things. Difference between having the train run on time and having the train actually get somewhere. So Bennis goes into about leaders being vision directed. They align others through meaning. That's the mission. They empower, they promote a learning culture. The difference between management and leadership. Management administers as a copy, accepts realities about system and structures, control, bottom line, imitating. A leader innovates, is an original, investigates about people, trust, long-range perspective, originates. Much different set of qualities, but you got to have both in this new world. Tom Peters in Thriving on Chaos is someone else I like. He talks about developing an inspiring vision, managing by example. If I look at your calendar and you're the leader, can I tell what's important? If I tell people it's important to be out in the community, does my calendar reflect that? Practice visible management, management by walking around, getting to the issues before they happen, versus KITA management, the old kick 'em in the ass style management. After someone has done something wrong, telling them about it. That doesn't help anybody right now. And deferring to the front line, delegating, bash the bureaucracy. So in the past we used to talk about the triangle, right? That as you went up in the organization, you went to the top, right? And then everything else was below you. So you got the corner office and you didn't have to do much. Peter says, nah, that's not the way it is. It's actually upside down the triangle. So now, if you're at the top, you're really at the bottom, and you've got to support everyone else throughout the organization. And finally, this type of thinking, where leaders know what needs to be done. Leaders behave in a way that others want to follow. The mirror test. What's that is tomorrow morning when you wake up, look in the mirror and ask yourself, would I want to work for that person? That's the ultimate test of whether or not you in fact are doing the kinds of things that others would follow. Max Dupree brings a nice concept of leadership is about hope. It's about a sense of the future. Leaders create hope by creating opportunity, identity, equity, designing the task. Barriers to leaders. Frances Hesselbein used to be the director of the Girl Scouts. A lack of goals, leading from the rear, no understanding of your strengths and weaknesses, lack of a positive approach, institutional impediments, hierarchical structures, corporate cultures that are incongruent, message and behavior that just don't match up. So I hope these help in some way to explain the dynamics involved in both board governance and executive leadership, and some of the theories and real practical ways of implementation that make both governance and executive leadership work in the nonprofit sector.